Welcome to the Oracle Codex podcast. In this podcast, we are unfolding the divine mysteries and remembrances of the Oracle. What is her story? What was lost that we are now reclaiming? And what is her medicine? Let's unwind and reweave our sacred history. I'm your host, Grace, and I'll be holding space during our journey together. Love you so much, and let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to the Oracle Codex podcast, Embodied Woman, Embodied Man. I'm so honored to have you here with me today. We are talking about how to connect to God's source and how to feel God's source. And this is more of an advanced, not even advanced, but it can get technical. And so I'm trying to learn how to speak about advanced technical frequencies and energies and pull them into simplistic terms in which all people can understand, because it's really everybody's innate right to remember how to connect to God and to remember how to feel these potent frequencies that, when they come into our field and when we hear teachers talk about them, they can sound very technical and complex. And in the spiritual community, that kind of just creates separation where we don't really understand what they're saying. And so I don't want that energy in this podcast. And so bear with me in this journey of us remembering how to connect to God, and I'm going to try to simplify it as much as possible. I love our little tradition we've been doing over the last few episodes. What are you drinking if you're drinking anything? Today I am drinking a matcha latte. And the reason I ask this is because I feel like it's really sacred for us to share what we're nourishing our bodies with and what our medicine is when we listen to conversations like this, or when I am providing, this kind of talk. What am I drinking? And today I'm drinking matcha. In the Ayurvedic practice, they talk about heating and cooling foods, and my body type is very kapha and pitta. If you don't know what that is, kapha is like this, I think it's cold and wet, and then pitta is like fire, it's hot. And so they're kind of like connected to elementals. And in Ayurvedic practicings, these foods all have certain attributes that are unique to them. So whether it's warming or cooling or dry or wet. And so matcha is very cooling for me as a pitta kapha. If I eat things like cinnamon or coffee or chocolate too much, I find that I get overheated and that my body doesn't function as well. And so instead of cacao, which I love to drink too, I tend to lean into matcha lately because it's more cooling for my body. But if you didn't know about that, definitely tune into Ayurvedic eating. It's really interesting. I don't follow it really closely, but just to kind of learn about it is really, really fascinating. And so let me know what you're drinking. And so today we're tuning into the pain of not being connected to God and how many of us are suffering in silence and suffering in ways that we don't quite understand, and we don't know why we're in so much pain. But most of the time it is connected to the fact that we're not connected to God. And even when we seek our embodiment or our purpose or, a loving relationship or health, it always comes back to, are we able to tune in with ourselves? And when we tune into ourselves, do we feel this severance from God? Because God and Source Creator contains and provides us this vitality, this life force, this essence of creation. And so if we're not connected to that, of course we're going to feel this lack in our body, something is missing, or we're hollowed out, or there's something not right. And we need to pay attention to that. I think that prescription drugs can provide, quick relief when we are struggling immensely with, mental hurdles or mental illness or, a lot of pain. But we also need to not bandage the wound in a way that doesn't actually allow it to heal, We need to look at the root cause and look at the real problem here. The reason so many people are depressed and anxious right now is because they're not in their bodies, and they don't know how to get back in their bodies, and they don't know how to connect to God and to themselves. And this is the pinnacle of, I would say, why we're all numbed out on our phones and numbed out with all of these toxins. And all of it is, it's a very, as you know, the listener, the person watching this, you know what I'm talking about. It's a very big, elaborate story, and I don't want to get too much into the complications of it today. But there is a deep severance that we are all experiencing in this density level on Earth. So when I say density level, I mean, think about God, way up in the high sky, way up in the higher dimensional planes, wherever and however you feel God, in that beautiful divine essence source where we all came from. It's indescribable. It's literally like this beacon, like this sun, or like this energy that is just immense. It's absolutely undescribable. And we all came from that. And as we descended lower and 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 lower onto Earth, we at some point looked up in the sky and we could hardly see God anymore. But what's happening on the planet right now is that there's a lot of things going on that are also inhibiting our capacity to connect to God, because it is our inherent, innate, organic right to be able to connect to God, no matter what density level you're on. Obviously, we fall into such a low density. And when I say density, I mean like 3D. You've heard this, if you're in the spiritual community, you've heard this 3D, 4D, 5D, yay, we've ascended. I don't believe that we have ascended at 5D. I think that that's ridiculous. There are so many more dimensions, and the 4D, 5D, 6D is actually just the astral. And so we have so many dimensional layers in which we are separated from God within. And right now we're at the 3D. So it's a very slow, low frequency. And within being at this low density rate and in this dimensional place where, we're really far away from God, there have also been many ways in which beings or agendas have tried to sever us even further from God, whether that's from frequency fences, from poisoning our food, from numbing us out and not allowing us to connect to our bodies. We are experiencing a lack of being able to connect to God, and it is inherent, and we need to acknowledge it. It's happening. And on this planet, the more that we ascend, the more that we tune back into our bodies, we're going to reconnect to God. And it's not that God's not here. God is here. God is all around us. God is everywhere. But we've lost our capacity to feel, and that's what I want to talk about today. De-numbing and remembering how to connect to God. We've also been brainwashed into believing that God is like this man in the sky, this idol that we need to idolize. And we've also been kind of programmed to believe that God is a man, and it's a man that's not very forgiving, and it's a man that is pretty strict about whether we're going to get into heaven or not. So we can see this in so many religions and traditions, in which God is deemed as a pretty strict, loving, but stern God, right? And this has actually just kept us in place, kept us where the people who created these rules want us to be, right? Don't sin. Don't think that you can connect to God on your own. Don't eat this. Don't do this. All of these things. I believe that there are definitely laws universally that protect us and allow us to maintain integrity and allow us to maintain sovereignty and this divinity in our body and our being. But when we look at like religions like Christianity, Catholicism, Hinduism, all of these religions that have kind of put us in these little boxes of do this and don't do that, we need to look at the bigger picture of why are we placed in these little boxes, and what is the real meaning of this? Why can't I connect to God on my own and in my own way? my clients always tell me that, working with me is a little bit different because I encourage them to try things that other people aren't talking about, to do things that other people aren't prescribing, meditations, energy healings, go connect to the trees and sing and dance and one of my teachers recommended I put my womb to the earth and just let myself feel the frequency of Mama Yaya. I tell my students to eat when they want to eat, to, exercise how they want to exercise, meditate for however long they need to meditate. Because when we start to learn how to connect to God in our own way and how to pull in these frequencies, this is innovation, this is creationality. This is why in Lemuria and in Atlantis, when these civilizations were so advanced, it's because everybody was sovereign, connecting to God and pulling in these codes that were so potent and profound that they weren't being told, do not do that. Obviously there were rules and regulations, like I just talked about, to maintain a healthy society and to maintain sovereignty and integrity and peace. But it wasn't like, controlling. It wasn't like, oh, I don't want you to do that because I don't want you to be free. Right? And so we need to acknowledge when we're not being, given our sovereignty. Let me not go on a tangent. So these religions have stifled us from being able to connect to God. And they have described God as an evil God. And so obviously we are now reprogramming and not reprogramming, but releasing the programming of what we have been told that God is. Who wants to connect to a God that they're afraid of? Who wants to connect to a God that, might put them in the burning gates of hell? Nobody wants to connect to a God like that. That's horrifying, but it creates power and it creates fear. And if people are in fear, then they will do what you say. And so we are releasing this. And I had this beautiful download come through a few years ago about how to connect to God when I was really seeking access to God. And when we connect to God, obviously our frequency has to slow down a lot. And the reason that it must slow down a lot is because when we go into higher dimensional planes, and my students learn this when we learn energy healing, subtle energy, when we slow down, we are able to tune more into the subtleties and into the microscopic codes and the things that come in and the geometries and the sounds and the feelings, because we are able and open enough when we slow down to witness and to hold more space. But when we are in a fast-paced society like we are today, we're not aware of what's going on at all, because we're numbed out, we're desensitized, and we're overwhelmed, and our nervous systems can't hold space for that. When we tune into God, the energy really slows down, the frequency really slows down, and it asks us to unfold. It's almost like a flower, like the energy of a flower, like all the petals, soft, supple, they open and they unfold. And that is when we are really able to attune into God's frequency. And the truth is that God is not just a man in the sky or a woman in the sky or like this big, great being separate from you in the sky. God is actually all around you. And this was the code that came in, and the epiphany I had is that I didn't have to turn my third eye into my brain and try to access God in the high heavens or in the 12th dimension and beyond. I could actually feel God all around me. I could feel God in the breath that I took in. I could feel God in the dust. I could feel God in the particles all around me, because everything is made up of God. Everything is made up of this life force. And so we need to stop tuning outside of ourselves, whether that's into the 3D reality and all of the people that we idolize and all of the material things that we want, or tuning into the higher dimensional planes and all of our past lives and all of our guides and all that stuff. It's fun, it's cool, it definitely adds elements to what we're doing, but it's all also right here in your aura, in your light body. And so when we tune in to God, we can feel God literally all around you, encasing you. you are literally made up of God, energy, life force, right? Everything is one. Everything is one dispersed into a billion, trillion, quadrillion, tiny little particles. And that is you. And so when we tune into all of life around us, we can feel this more deeply when you tune into plants and nature, right? The more organic, the easier it is to tune into God's source creator, right? It's hard to like tune into your bed sheets and be like, that's God, as it is to like tune into a plant and be like, oh, that's God. Like it's natural, it's organic, it's breathing, it's alive. Or your drinks, or the light that you have, or the sun, or the air, it's all God. And so instead of tuning up to, the fifth dimension or the 12th dimension, you can literally just tune into your current external environment, or your aura, your life field, or also more powerfully your internal environment, your cells, your DNA, your blood, your tissues, your muscles. That is also God. That is also like vitality and life force. And I shared on my stories a couple weeks ago that all of the cells in our body, there are billions of cells in our body, and they all have kind of personalities, is what scientists are starting to realize. They all have the capacity to choose. They have like free will to choose what they want to do. Obviously, they work together and they're working for your highest good because their main objective is to keep you healthy. But they have like the capacity to choose things and to like not do things. And they move and they have like personalities. It's so cute and cool. And it's cool to think about like the fact that there's an ecosystem, almost these beings, these living beings that exist in your body. And that is also God. God exists in your body. God exists all around you. Whew. And so when we feel into this frequency, right, we feel loved, we feel empowered, we feel embodied, we feel like we can take on things, we feel like we're held, we feel like we're provided for, we feel abundant, we feel like we can ask questions, we feel like we can receive answers, we feel like we can receive. And that's the truth of our organic nature, is that we are so provided for. But we've just been so convinced and programmed to not be able to feel the subtlety of God all around us, wherein which we give all of our power to things outside of us, like the priest. Only the priest can connect me to God. Only this, really expensive vitamin can give me health. None of that is true. God exists within us. God is all around us and within us. And that recodes and allows us to remember how precious this life is and how precious you are to God, because God would never abandon you. And of course, many of us have God wounds. So this is a different layer and a different conversation, really. But many of us are dealing with and healing from God wounds because many of us have felt deeply connected to God in the higher dimensional planes, whether it's our higher selves or aspects of self. We know what it's like to be deeply connected to God. And now we also know what it's like to be deeply severed from God in this 3D and in this society. And this has created abandonment, traumatization. Not only that, but many people grow up in families that are not supportive to the Trinity, the Holy Family architecture, wherein which they would be nurtured into remembering their personal empowerment. Instead, they are severed even deeper by not believing that they have a loving mother or a loving father or a loving God, and that they are just adrift in this society in pain and suffering. And that is an incredibly traumatizing experience that many of us are dealing with and healing at this time. And so, of course, as an energy healer, my biggest advice would be to start learning energy healing and to start taking action and being able to work within your field, to start accessing God all around you so that you can empower yourself back into your personal sovereignty, so that you can lead and so that you can remember God and be of service to this planet. So this is something that I would call precious recoding. And that's kind of a weird word, but it's just something that came through, and it's something that, it's the only way I can really describe it right now, is precious recoding, because many people are convinced that God is evil and that God has betrayed us. And many people are convinced that this world is unloving and that people are unkind and that the evil is winning. But that is, first of all, we can look at the mental level. That's a belief system. That's a perspective, right? And so that is also being pushed upon us within frequencies, EMFs, social media, TV programming, music, all of these things that degrade our capacity to believe in God, our family members maybe, our friends maybe, things that we've witnessed, traumatizations that we've witnessed, lineage line pains and sufferings that are coming up for us to heal. It comes at us like a tsunami of, intensity that we're being asked to hold space for. And it's incredibly difficult. I would never, demean the intensity of what it is to be alive as somebody who's aware and conscious and dealing with this work and choosing courageously to do this work. It takes an immense amount of humbleness and courage and integrity to continue to descend into the self, to continue to unfold with God, so that we can get to the root of, why do I feel this way? Why is the planet, going in this direction? In my opinion, the truth is that we are ascending and that we are connected to God, and God is right here. It's just that we are living on a planet that is run by people who are severed from God. We are living on a planet run by people who do not want us to be empowered. And so they're going to make it as hard as possible for us to be able to remember our personal power and to remember our empowerment and how to really heal ourselves. They don't want it to work like that because they want us to be enslaved to their system. I don't want to get too deep here, but when we start working with precious encoding, right? So precious remembrance, you can go out into nature and feel this love from nature, from God, and start to heal your God wounds, start to forgive God, start to be an active participant in healing your wounds, in healing your God wounds, in healing your wounds with, maybe it's Jesus or any other ascended masters that can help you. And when we become an active participant in this, things start to unfold a lot quicker for us, because we are opening up and allowing the energies to move and starting to say, okay, I'm not going to stay stuck in this mud anymore. I'm going to start to move the ticker. I'm going to start to change. I'm going to start to become more embodied. And it's a hard thing to do, but it's worth it. And that's all I have for you guys today. A deeper one, but one that is super meaningful and hopefully empowering for you to remember and to work within. And if it was helpful for you, please leave a comment down below. I would love to hear how this served you and how it made you feel and what's coming up for you. And if you want to work deeper with me, you can find me at creationalcodes.com. I am going to be delivering a program soon where you can learn energy healing and learn the work that I provide for yourself and become a deeply advanced, embodied woman, driven on her purpose, driven in her mission, and able to do this work on her own. That is my vision. And if you want to work one-on-one with me, I do have spots available right now, so you can tune into that if that feels supportive for you. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Much love.